Hello, this is Anjana and welcome to the fourth session in Ruby. In this tutorial, we will learn about some of the data types in Ruby, like symbols, arrays, hashes, Boolean values, etc. We will also learn about iterators. Here we are using Ubuntu version 12.04 and Ruby 2.0. To follow this tutorial, you must have a basic understanding of object-oriented concepts. You also must have installed the Skite editor and have it open and ready to use. Ruby has several data types, some of which are Boolean, symbols, arrays, hashes. We will also learn about iterators, which make use of the collections, arrays and hashes. Basically, these arrays and hashes become of some use to us because of these iterators. Switch to the Skite editor and let's see what class the true object belongs to. It belongs to the true class. Similarly, false is a false class. The word Ruby is a string class, and a symbol represented by a colon is a symbol class. Let's look at what symbols are in Ruby. A symbol is the most basic Ruby object you can create. It is just a name and an internal ID. Symbols are important because a given symbol name refers to the same object throughout a Ruby program. Symbols are more efficient than strings. Let us see why. Let's define a string and check the object ID of it. Now let's do the same, and you'll notice that the second object ID is different from the first, which means that two strings with the same content are two different objects. But for any given name, there is only one symbol object, and this can save both time and memory. So if we were to define it as a string and check the object ID and define another one, you'll notice that the object IDs are the same. Please note that there is no need to assign any value to a symbol. Ruby takes care of that for you. Ruby also guarantees that no matter where it appears in your program, a particular symbol will have the same value. Therefore, when do we use a string versus a symbol? If the contents, the sequence of characters of the object are important, use a string. If the identity of the object is important, use a symbol, and that's where it comes in handy in the Rails framework. So Rails is actually used to create full-fledged web applications, and it's based off of the Ruby programming language, and you'll see a lot of symbol usage there. Now let's look at what arrays are. An array is nothing but a collection of items, and these items can be of any type. Ruby uses square brackets to denote an array. The first element in an array has an index of 0, and the last element of an array has an index of size -1. So let's define an array of numbers 4. And it has numbers 0. So array starts with an index 0. You'll notice that it prints 1. Now this is equivalent to -4. So this has an index of 0 or -4. -4 is the length of the array. And then moving on to numbers -3, it'll print 2. So the cool thing about arrays is that all of them need not be the same data type. You can actually define a string, a Boolean, a float, and an array. So this forms a two-dimensional array. And let's see what the results are. -3, so that would be -4 -3, and that's 2. True. To get to the internal array, we can actually do a, let's say we want to print 3. The position of this internal array would be put as numbers -1, and to print out 3 you would do a 2. So that's how you access a two-dimensional array, and this is the same as doing 2 -2. So that's how the array indexes or the indices work. Now let's look at what iterators are. Iterators are nothing but methods supported by collections. To list a few iterators, we have each, collect, select, and map. Let's give them a try. So we have the array of numbers, and let's say that we want to print these elements, print out these elements. So you would call an iterator called each, do item, and let me close the block, and let us print each of these items. So you'll notice that it prints every element in the array. The thing about the do end block is that it enables you to write multiple lines of code, Ruby code in it. So you can actually manipulate each item that you get from the array. For instance, let's say that you have an array of numbers. You can actually do an item plus equal 1. It adds 1 to each item, each element, and then it prints it out, 2, 3, 4. So each will evaluate the block with each array and will return the original array and not the calculated one. So here I actually have put as item, and that is why it prints out each element. But if I were to do, there's a shortcut to the do end block, and that is by using curly braces. Usually you use curly braces if you have only a single line. So let's see how a one line iterator looks like. So here let me define the item that I'm iterating on, and I do a item. I basically manipulate the array, and let me do a put s, and let me comment this out so it doesn't come in the way. And you'll notice that it actually prints out the original array. It doesn't manipulate, or it doesn't change the original array. So for that we have the other methods that are coming in handy, and that is collect. So it comes in handy while working with each iterator is useful while working with models in the Rails framework. However, to manipulate collections you would use other iterators like collect, select, map, etc. They are the preferred choices, which we will be seeing soon. Now the code within the curly braces is called a block. And as I said earlier, if the code is long enough to be put in one line, it is enough to be enclosed within the curly braces. Otherwise it will need a do and end block. So let's see how collect, select and map work. So let's replace the each with collect this time, or just use the one-liner code. So let's replace the each with collect, and let me clear the output window and execute it. You'll notice that it prints out the new collection, the manipulated collection. Now let's do the same with select. Select also returns the original array. How about map? Map returns the new array. So you'll notice that select and each return the original array, whereas collect and map return the transformed array. All of them do the same thing. However, a putS will print the result. It's purely a matter of choice which iterator to choose from. For securing values that meet a criteria, I would go with select. So if you want to see only the items that are greater than 2, then it's just a question of just putting the condition in there and using select. So for such situations, select comes of use, especially since it has a handy counterpart called reject, and reject does right the opposite, so it prints out the items that are lesser than 2, which is 1 and 2. To check out all possible methods available to arrays, please visit the Ruby docs at www.ruby-doc.org. Now let's look at what hashes are. A hash is a collection of key value pairs. Elements in a hash are accessed by keys. They are similar to arrays except that indexing is done via keys. These indexes can be of any data type: integers, strings, arrays, etc. Let us create a hash with symbols as keys. So let's define a hash, my hash, and let's initialize it. You can add elements to the hash by defining the key and value pairs. My hash subject, that's my hash subject. Now a non-existent key will return nil by default. So let's run this. So it returns the value map, and let's see the hash that you just created. So these are the key value pairs that you just created. Now if you were to call a key that doesn't exist, it will return nothing. Now you really do not have to initialize a hash before creating. You can just simply add values like so. Name, subject, or maybe English, etc. And you can see the values of it by accessing the key since it's a symbol. An exception to the shorter symbol value syntax is when you would like to use a numeric key. For instance, if you were to use hash or a hash put as a hash, you'll notice that it gives a syntax error. So in the case of numeric keys, you will have to use the following syntax, and that works. Now let us get our hands dirty making use of arrays and hashes like professional developers do. Let us try to do a small program. Try to convert an array of adjacent elements to a hash. So let's say that we have some items here like fruit, orange, stationery, pencil, and let's define a hash that we would like the items to get converted to. So this hash is right now empty. So the goal is to convert the items, the array to a hash. The adjacent elements would be a key value pair. So first off, we would need to iterate over the array, and as you iterate them, you need to get a hold on the index. So array has a cool method called each index that comes in handy here. So let's do an each index, and let's use the do end syntax, and close it with an end. Now let's initialize, or let's start building the hash from the making use of the index. So you define items index is equal to items index plus 1. So the key would be the value represented, a value at this particular index location, and the value will be basically the adjacent element, that will be index plus 1. And now let's slice out the items dot slice out the index. Slice is another method that Ruby provides for an array, and providing the position or the index of a particular element of the array, you can remove it from the array. And slice with a bang actually transforms the array. So bang operators usually they manipulate the array, the original array. If there was no bang, the original array wouldn't be affected. So this would remove the element at this position, and since we've already built the array, the hash with the key value pair, we don't need that. So that's why we're removing it. So now let's print out the hash that got created. Slice is a method provided by Ruby for an array. To slice is an array method provided by Ruby that removes the element at this particular index. So since we've already built the array, built a hash using the index and the adjacent item, we can remove the item from the array. Now here I've used the bang operator. Bang actually manipulates the original array. If there was no bang, we would still get the original array. So let's print this out, print the array that was, the hash that was formed, and there you go. You have successfully programmed a hash, from an array. With this session comes to an end. In this session, we talked about data types in Ruby, symbols, arrays, hashes, and iterators. Ruby has a rich online community and resources for documentation. Try and check them out. Until then, this is Anjana Nair signing off. Thank you.